class packages were a penny an ounce for packages up to 4 pounds. Rogue homesteaders quickly took advantage of this cheap rate. They instructed mail order companies like Sears Roebuck to break down their shipments in as many 4-pound packages as necessary. It sure beat the high cost of overland or ocean freight, and the mail order companies were happy to oblige. According to the contract, the mailboat operator could set his own rate for carrying local freight upriver. Usually, it was around a penny per pound. There was no weight restriction except what the boat could carry. Upstream residents benefited again from this bargain. They had groceries and supplies sent from Gold Beach as freight rather than mail. More often than not, the weekly mailboat runs were loaded down with hundreds of pounds of mail and freight. To successfully transport this cargo along the constantly shifting river required expert boatsmanship. That and an intimate knowledge of every twist and turn, every rock, rapid, and riffle. Fortunately, the early mailboat pilots were up to the task. Most shipments made it upriver safe and intact, even the ones they said would never float. Many unusual shipments were carried upstream by mailboat. Full-sized automobiles, heavy equipment, a complete home, even all the parts of a steel suspension bridge that would eventually span the river at Agnes. One of the biggest dangers faced by the early boatmen were rock slides. Slide Creek and Riffle are named for a huge mud and rock slide that slammed into the creek's headwaters. Here marks the beginning of the designated scenic section of the Rogue River. There are no roads along this section of the river until the mailboat reaches the community of Agnes. Here, trees and shrubs cling precariously to high canyon walls that descend to the river's edge. Laurels, maples and oaks, cedars, firs and hemlocks thrive in the rich soil and moisture-laden climate. Unusual species inhabit this special place. Pacific madrone, a deciduous evergreen, sheds its cinnamon-colored bark each year. The myrtlewood tree is prized for its unique grain and excellent carving characteristics. It's found only in this region and on the other side of the world in the Holy Land. Flowering shrubs and wildflowers dot the hillsides with eruptions of color. Trillium, wild iris, asters, and foxglove mingle with dense fern in a vibrant, all-natural display. To a prospector, everything pales in the presence of gold. The yellow metal was first discovered along the Rogue in 1851. Miners quickly abandoned played-out claims in California and headed north. The evidence of this boom can still be seen today. In 1870, at this remote creek, Judge Riley and 5 other prospectors came to seek their fortunes amid rumors of a large deposit of gold. They panned for weeks with little luck. Finally, a dejected, pale, and sick Judge Riley decided to call it quits. The others agreed to leave the next day. As morning broke, one of the prospectors woke up early to try his luck one last time. That's when it happened. He could scarcely believe his eyes as the large amber nugget stared up at him from the bottom of his pan. Running and whooping back to camp, he shouted, "Wake up, Riley! We've struck it rich!" But Judge Riley had died in his sleep. Today, weekend treasure hunters still pan for gold at Wake Up Riley Creek and other places along the road. Many are successful in turning up small amounts of the precious metal. At Little Canyon, the mailboat enters a narrow yet deep section of the river. On canyon walls, 100 feet above the river level, an area is remarkably scrubbed clean of trees and plants. It's the high water mark of the disastrous 1964 flood. It had snowed early and heavy that fall in the Cascade and Siskiyou Mountains. Skiers were rejoicing over the early season. Then in December, it warmed up and began to rain. For 2 solid weeks, it poured nearly non-stop in southern Oregon. As the snowpack melted, the Rogue began to rise. By December 22nd, the Rogue was in full flood stage. This once clear, rushing stream was now a raging monster. 24 homes floated downstream in the rolling waters. At Gold Beach, the sand was littered with splintered debris and shattered dreams. The steel suspension bridge at Agnes was totally engulfed and destroyed. Its deck normally towered 65 feet above river level. The newly constructed Illinois River Bridge, completed 1 year earlier, was absolutely obliterated. Towers and girders lay sheared and twisted like neglected toys. It was the worst rogue flood in recorded history. Bear Canyon lies a few miles upriver from Little Canyon. It was named by the mailboat pilots in recognition that more black bear are seen here than any other place on the river. This section of the river is also home to raptors. Bald eagle and osprey catch the thermals and soar high above the river. Then, in a silent swoop, they snag a writhing meal. Coexisting with the bear, the eagle, and other wildlife of the Rogue were its first human inhabitants. Native American artifacts dating back 9,000 years have been found along the Rogue's banks. Painted Rock was the site of one such Indian village. The Takelma tribe flourished along the Upper Rogue and Rogue Valley. The Tutuni and Shasta Costa bands inhabited the lower river. These indigenous groups paddled their canoes through the same riffles, the same rapids that the mailboats run today. These early residents feasted upon the bountiful game. They caught fish through a clever system of weirs, underwater fences constructed of poles and stakes that diverted trout and salmon into shallow pools. Still existent piles of acorn and mussel shells attest to their appetite for these delicacies. But their world changed forever with the arrival of the French-Canadian trappers in the 1830s. The trappers call this river La Rivière à Coquin, or River of the Rogues, after minor skirmishes with the Takelmas. But these native people were not scoundrels. They were living the simple, cyclical rhythms of a society that had existed long before Europeans set foot on the North American continent. In defending their culture, frequent clashes broke out with the trappers, miners, and settlers of the 1850s. An 1853 treaty was ultimately broken in 1855 by a party of whites who decimated 2 Indian camps of mostly women and children. The Takelma went on the attack, followed soon after by the Tutuni and Shasta Costa. Battles raged up and down the Rogue Canyon in the Indian Wars of 1855 to 1856. The last conflict of that war was fought here at Painted Rock on June 6, 1856. At Copper Canyon, bronze rock walls rise 400 feet above the river, while 60 feet below water level, prehistoric relics cruise the sun-mottled depths. Sturgeon growing 20 feet long, weighing up to 1,000 pounds and living upwards of 100 years, slowly sweep this shadowy realm. The Rogue is justifiably famous for its fishery. Runs of salmon and steelhead are legendary. Anglers from around the world come to try their luck on this premier fly-fishing river. Crooked Riffle presented early mailboat pilots with a difficult navigation problem. A sharp 90-degree bend and rough water played havoc with attempts to simultaneously steer and row. Not until the advent of gas engine-powered boats was this troublesome segment of the river tamed. The first motorized mailboats appeared around 1900. These one-cylinder, 5-horsepower craft often needed manual assistance to move upriver. But as the years passed, the engines became more powerful. The first fully motorized run up the Rogue was made by Elihu Fry in his boat, the Joker, in 1917. The 22-foot craft was powered by a 20-horsepower engine. The mailboats could now make the Gold Beach to Agnes trip in 1 day. So the post office instituted a 3 times per week route, much to the joy of locals. The mailboats motored upriver every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. They returned each Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday. Frank Lowry ran the mail from 1918 to 1930. He carried an increasingly large assortment of freight, including such unwieldy items as pianos, cast-iron kitchen stoves, and bathtubs. even a 1928 Chevrolet Roadster.